Hello, and welcome to the Felix Instruments AppBuilder video tutorial on how to create an application. This video will demonstrate the general workflow for creating an application from scratch. The very first thing I'm going to do is open AppBuilder, and then I will create a blank application by either clicking the shortcut link or by going to File, New Project. Once the new project has been created, I will first give it a name. I'm going to call this Demo App. And then I'm going to put some notes in here. Something like, this is an application for demonstration only, created by Galen George. And I'm going to give it a date. And from here, what I'm going to do is click File, Save Project As. And I'm going to call this Demo App, all one word, and save it as a Felix App project. This will allow me to later open up this project and add all my data to it. And now the next step is to click Create App. This will actually deploy the application itself, and you can do that directly to your SD card, or you can save it manually and then later deploy it to your SD card, simply dragging and dropping the file. So I'm going to save it manually as Demo App, and I'm going to save. And now the next step will be to deploy that app onto my instrument and then take some scans, and then I will be able to actually go and create my models. Now that we've created the demo app inside of the AppBuilder software and we've loaded it onto our instrument, the next step is going to be to collect data using this application that we can then use for model building. So this step is going to involve turning the instrument on by clicking the green power button. And once the instrument then turns on, we will click the right arrow to access the main menu, and we will click it again to load an application. We will go to our application. It's called Demo App. And then from here, we can actually go right into taking some measurements. So we're going to click the measurement button and scan our object of interest. For this demonstration purpose, these are simply polypropylene blocks. And so now the instrument is just going to be collecting all that spectral information, which we can then go and use to create chemometric models inside of the AppBuilder software. So we'll go ahead and take a couple scans here. And you saw on that screen that the result displayed as 0.0, and that's simply because we don't have any sort of model built into this application yet. It's simply there to help the instrument collect data for the model to then be built. Navigating back to the main menu. So from here, what you would want to look at are things like the default lot. Make sure things are named appropriately. You can change your lot incrementation logic, and then this feature is really important for tagging data with any sort of metadata you might have, temperatures, cultivars. The default tags is a great option for that. You can also archive your measurements or access any number of advanced options. So you could change your sample scans to average if you wanted to increase that, or decrease it to increase the scan time or decrease the scan time. You can also change the text file name, and you can also upload your data to a data server if need be. So we'll take a couple more measurements for this model, and then the next step after we collect this data will be to actually put this data into AppBuilder and build the chemometric model, which we will then be able to test and validate. So now that I've taken the scans that I want to include in my model, what I'm going to do is reopen AppBuilder, and I'm going to go ahead and click the Recent Projects Demo App. Other ways you could go about opening the application that you've already started is to click Open an App on the shortcuts, or go to File, Open Project. But since this is a recent project, I'm simply going to go ahead and click this link, and it will open up that Demo App project that we've already created. And then from here, I'm going to click the Chemometrics Models tab. And this is where we're going to import our data as well as the reference values and create and actually train the model. So I'm going to click Import Measurements, and I'm going to choose a folder. And I know that I dragged this directly from the device onto my desktop. There are other ways to go about getting this data imported. You can also do it directly from the SD card on the device, or you could put it onto your computer like I have here. And so I'm going to go ahead and import my archived data. That's where the folder that I know that the DAT files are in. And I'm going to tell it to auto increment starting at 1. And I want this data to be both training and testing data. So the testing data is basically validation data, so it'll serve as both validation and training data. The graph color I'm going to leave as orange, and I'm going to click OK. So now we see we have 12 measurements. I did 3 replicate measurements for each of the polypropylene blocks that are in this model. The reference values for which I'm going to type in. You can also copy and paste this information directly from Excel. So essentially these numbers are just the density levels of the polypropylene. So now I have all of my spectra that I collected. I have the reference values input, and now I'm going to train the model. I could also rename it now, or I could rename it later. We're just going to leave it as Untitled Model for now. And I'm going to leave all of the settings for this model. I'm going to leave them where they're at. So this is going to be a PLS model. The wavelength range is going to be 729 to 975. Pre-processing, I'll put none. Principal components, I'll just leave at the default of 6. And then I will go ahead and click train. And the training is what actually builds our model. And so if I had other analytes that I wanted to assess within this application, I could create new models for each of those, and there's no limit to how many I make. So I could have, for instance, multiple cultivars with multiple analytes each, all within one application if I chose. So now that we have the model built, it's a PLS model from 729 to 975 nanometers. You can see that for this untitled model, for this analyte that we're predicting, which is just density of the polypropylene, we're looking at predicted values here. And then we can actually expand this graph section on the bottom. We can see the distribution of our reference values. It's completely even. I can also pull up the spectra here, and we can see that there are 4 different distinct spectra, each with 3 spectra within those categories, which lines up with the 4 different levels of density that I have within this model. And then if I go to my model performance, we can actually see that I have a perfect R squared with 1. And it also shows our RMSE for both the train and the test data. So since I have all this data is both in my model and also being simultaneously tested against the model. So now we have this model is built. What I'm going to do is save the project so that we don't lose any of our progress. If I wanted to add new models to this application, I would simply select the new model from the dropdown. It'll create a blank model for me to then upload data, as well as insert reference values. If I wanted to, and we'll call this blank, So from the drop down, now we can see our untitled model, which contained the density. So I'll rename this density. If I wanted to simply add data to this model and compare it to the original model, I could just duplicate this model. It'll retain all of the information I've already put in, so the reference values are still in there, all the spectra is still in there. We can simply add on to it, or we can alter it, which data is in the training or test set, but I'll leave it as is. So now that we have the model and everything saved, and we want to actually use this in the field for non-destructive measurements, now that our model's built and we are happy and satisfied with the robustness of the model, we can now create this app and deploy it. And I'm actually going to save over the app that I've already built, because that app was just for the data collection process. And then what I'll do again is manually deploy this file, this application file, onto my device, and I will then go and actually use it in the field and get non-destructive results for this specific model. And so that application, like I said, can house many models. Right now it's just that one model, but as many as you can think of, we do support a lot more models now within each application. So you can have multiple cultivars, multiple temperatures, multiple maturity levels, whatever you want to do with your model building is now capable with the new AppBuilder software. So that's the general workflow for how to create an application from scratch. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us on our website at www.felixinstruments.com.